Um, okay, just a sec. I need to have to write things down or I forget. Okay. Okay. So the first thing we have on the agenda is an update on FY26, and I wanted us just to talk about the financial report, and also start. I I wanted this to be a start of a discussion about where we should keep our reserve fund balance at, the various reserve funds. So in terms of the periodic report, what I wanted, okay, Peggy, I need you to tell me that it's okay for you to be recorded. Someone's requested to record the meeting. You have to unmute.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Um, okay, so for the periodic financial report, Peggy, can you remute?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. One request that I had is that we have a report of what the current status of revenues received is at the time of the report and our expectation of what we will receive, not the budgeted minus what we've received, but what we actually think we're going to get, so that we have a sense of where we are truly with our budget and revenues. So that was one suggestion I had. Landlord, do you have any other things you wanted to add? No? Len?
Um, Sorry, I was looking at some of the new attachments related to the funds.
This is for the periodic report.
Yeah.
I wanted us to,
Yeah, no, that sounds right. I agree. I mean,
okay.
I'd like to look at the budget all in, right? Because with different CFOs, and even with the same CFO, we keep moving things in and out of funds. One year it's this, one year it's that, this year it's paraprofessionals. So we can't just put those funds aside. We can for like the after school program and community ed, and the daycare program. Those are all basically enterprise type accounts where we don't really budget those positions. But for the other funding sources, even Title One, we kind of do. So I'd like to look at everything, and just looking at the general fund confuses the picture because it's not 100% of the picture.
Okay. So are you saying that for the reports or for the actual budget or both? Or what are you thinking?
It's both. I mean, in the budget, some of the tables have everything and some don't, which is a little bit confusing, but at least it's there.
It's titled too. We know what we're
Yeah.
seeing, which we hadn't known before. Oh, okay. Okay. Laura, anything else? No. Um, Chris, Liz, any comments about this?
So
Chris,
go ahead, Liz.
nope, I was telling you to go ahead.
I don't disagree with anything discussed here. I know in the past, at least the updates I watched from last year's meetings, they included something after the operating budget review that spoke to revolving accounts and spoke to grants. I think to your point, the revolving accounts kind of only told the story of this is what we put on the funding summary chart and this is where we are year to date. It doesn't really tell you the whole story, which is why I think when I did my first update after being here 2 or 3 weeks, I just kind of focused on operating because you hadn't even seen that yet this fiscal year. And then for January, we still had yet to have a full conversation about how can I, in my position, better report to you the health of the revolving accounts, how we're using them. And I apologize that we haven't really had that discussion because it was kind of coinciding with how I was building the budget. And I know I didn't really get to formally present anything on revolving accounts. And it's nothing to what we're talking about today, but until the kind of workshop meeting. So what I'd only ask for is for whatever I am working on this, is that I maybe first present it within the setting of this subcommittee, because I think it's not just so much a year and a date capsule, but it's what is our prior balances, what are we carrying into this year, projection of this year as well as going forward, just so I can kind of, it's not just a snapshot of revolving account in a year, it's the health of it over a lifetime and going forward. So I just like to submit it here for feedback before maybe it goes to the bigger body, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that
Because
totally.
it needs to be something a little bit newer and different than what has been done in the past.
And that's why I'm bringing it up now, is
Yep.
just so we can start this conversation. So as you put together the next one, at least
Sure.
we can get closer. And I'm happy to schedule a meeting before you do the next, before you present the next one
Sure.
to do it. I'm most, I guess I can see the advantages of the all-in. It gets a little confusing when we start talking to the public because the general fund is the general fund's what town meeting approves, and it's easier. I mean, there is some advantage to having that separated out. But we can certainly continue that discussion. My biggest concern is just being able to keep track of what monies we expected we would have, we actually have, and also if we're spending from savings. One, I want to know that, and two, I want to know what the account balances were and will be.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
So
I can work on a draft of something and share it back with this body.
okay. Anything else on this for right now? Okay, not seeing anything else. So then the other thing I put here was funds balance discussion. And I don't mean for us to come to any decision at this point. When we had the workshop, Mr. Cardin was talking about having that perhaps the foreign tuition should be even taken down to zero. I have a very different view of that. And we need to come up with what we think the numbers should be, and then how do we make that decision? You know, do we just do it here at budget? Do we involve the whole committee or what? And by balance, I mean kind of the expected balance in years where we're not in financial distress, or financial stress. So, Len, Laura, do you have anything you want to add about this?
Sure. I mean, I think we obviously need to have more of a discussion. I mean, where I'm coming from is, we have a finance committee reserve fund, which is, 1% of the town budget. So it's like $2 million, more than $2 million now. So there's a lot of money if there's an emergency, and obviously they're going to be very stingy with it. And that's sort of been our hitch, right? Because we don't sort of like to have to justify going to them to request that money. But they regularly, when there's a retirement on the town side that creates a large payout that wasn't budgeted, they routinely pay for that. And the colleagues in the finance committee can confirm that. So I think that, if, for example, this year, and we got those unexpected transportation costs, if we were not able to cover it, I would support going to the finance committee and requesting a reserve fund transfer like everybody else in town does. So I don't think we need to carry millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars as our own reserve, because then we got double reserves. We also have the special education circuit breaker as a reserve that we could always dip into. So there's too many, in my opinion, there's too many reserves. And at the very least, we should document what they are and come to some agreement as to what the appropriate amount should be. I definitely agree with that.
Okay. I was unaware that there were towns. I mean, I know we can go to the town asking for money, but I didn't realize there were specific places the money could come from. So it sounds like to some extent, this is really more of I mean, we should come up with what we're thinking, but also this is more of a either long range plan discussion or with FinCom. It's outside of just us, right? It's a thing because in the past, the town has not been, well, we've only had to go to the town when we had accounting issues and finished in deficit. So we haven't had to draw on them, but also the sense was, don't you ever come to the town again. Now that may be, don't you ever come to the town in deficit again, but it's kind of, the messaging is not clear, and to me, the decisions, the sense that I have gotten in the past is we need to be the only time we go to the town is like if a school burns up or something. Um, so I so we need to get guidance on that. Josh, Peggy, what are your thoughts about this? How would you have this conversation and with whom?
Well, I think that the finance committee doesn't like to be surprised about stuff. So if you would anticipate that you're going to need a transfer, then the more notice that they had would be great. I think that, I mean, there is money that's set aside like that, but I think your impression that the finance committee doesn't really like to dispense it after the fact is accurate. So, but on the other hand, I think Len's point about having multiple reserves and just kind of, having stuff stashed away in different places is probably also not ideal. So I think your plan going forward is a good one. Is
What
to,
was
to,
my
to itemize what's out there, have a good sense of what's out there, and then I would have a conversation with the finance committee about, if we give up some of this money because we need, we're giving up a cushion, then we may need to come back to you and ask for it, right?
okay?
But I think that the fact that you guys have agreed to stay at 4%, um, FinCom is a little divided, and so if you came back and said, okay, well, really, we need 4.5% or something like that, then that would not be met with welcome arms, I don't think.
Okay. Um, Peggy, do you have any ideas? And also, you have to introduce your cat.
This is Ellie. I agree with what Josh is saying. I think that FinCom is not going to like surprises. So as much forward notification you can provide is definitely excellent. And I do think you're going to get resistance if depending on what the ask is.
Okay. So to me, this sounds like I don't remember what FinCom's meeting schedule is, but it doesn't feel like this needs to happen before the override vote or anything. This would be a separate thing afterwards, sometime in the run up to town meeting or after it. It's like separate, really, from anything, so it can be slotted in whenever. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it,
more a long-term thing.
I'm
yeah.
sorry,
Sorry.
I didn't hear what you said, Lynn.
Sorry, I'm thinking it's more of a long-term thing, but go ahead, Peggy. What were you going to say? We're not looking for money for this year
Yeah.
or for next year. Just more like in general, how tight should our budget be? Because if we make it really tight and there's an unexpected expense of like $200,000, then, in the middle of a school year, we can't cut a teacher. So where does
Right,
that money come from, right?
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just someone
That's
else.
sort of the issue.
Yeah. I see him as Sarah Forster. I just want to let you know the meeting's being recorded and I need your assent that you're okay being recorded. This needs,
Yes, I'm okay being recorded. Thank you.
okay, sorry, go back to what you were saying. Lynn was talking.
So it sounds like the question is, how big a reserve should you have? Is
Yes,
that
yes. It's kind of how big of a hit are we expected to be able to absorb without coming to you folks? And then we can figure out if we are putting that into reserves or whether we would stop. I mean, some of it depends where in this year it happens, but do we put that into reserves? Do we stop buying superfluous, extra instructional materials or what? So,
well, I like Len's approach that it's probably my inclination is to wait until the to see if the override passes and getting through the FY27 budget approvals.
okay, so afterwards.
Yeah. And I
mean like
think,
town
yeah,
meeting?
in terms of long range planning, that it may be more of a question for them.
Do you mean get through FY27 budget approval by town meeting or by FinCom?
By FinCom, that would be my inclination.
Right. No,
But I think it sounds like it's a much larger question. It's not, I mean, I, I don't know, Josh, what do you
Yeah, I
think?
mean, is there a percentage that the school committee's kind of used in the past, of a percentage of reserve funds of your overall budget or anything like that?
no, we don't. We can hold the reserve accounts and they can be used for different purposes depending on them. And then we have the special ed circuit breaker. And we keep a year of that in reserve because we never know for sure that the state's going to give us the money the next year. And this gives us some buffer against weirdness on the state's part. And then we have a special education, what is it? Stability fund, or I don't remember what it's called. Yeah. Which is also for that's the first place. Usually special education is where our unexpected expenses have been coming from. So that's the first place we go. Then the next place we usually go is the reserve accounts that can be used for random things as opposed to specialized things. And then we start hitting the circuit breaker, the held in reserve circuit breaker. And I apparently there has been the superintendent has told me that there's been concern on the town side that we're supposed to be sweeping all of our extra money to the town like for the reserve accounts. And I personally have a hard time with that because I feel like we're running $100 million business essentially. And to do that without having anything in reserve for emergencies, you would never run a real business like that. That's crazy. And so I'm trying to be a good business person and protect our budget from unexpected hits. Liz, what's up?
So I just want to sort of clarify a little bit of what you just said in terms of what the strategy has been over the last few years, during which we have not had a stable person in Mr. Schweitzer's role, which we're very happy to now have. So we have one reserve fund as a school system. It is the SPED stabilization fund that I'm aware of. That has about $800,000 or so in it right now. We also have enterprise accounts that operate wholly separately from the general fund. There's no supplementation by the general fund. These are not programs that happen during the regular school day. After school is a good example. ACE is a good example. They operate like their own entity. And if we charge anything to those accounts, it has to be in accordance with the parameters of that account. So it has to be for after school, it has to be for extended day, it has to be for community education per the sort of establishment of that account and the rules attached to it. Then we have revolving accounts that act as offsets that bring in revenue, and they're offsets to things that we ask our existing staff essentially to like cover. So rentals is a good example of this. We have somebody come in for a rental, we get revenue from that, we use that revenue to pay for the cost of providing the rental. Our own staff who are paid on the general fund cover that detail, and then we move the expense of the rental over to the rental revolving. Same is true for the tuition revolving, the foreign tuition revolving, which we collect tuition into from students who want to come to Arlington to go to high school. We set that rate below, but around the per pupil amount. And then we use that account primarily for professional development, for resources that serve the kids at the high school, including the kids who are paying the tuition to come to us. So those are revolving accounts. They offset expenses we incur because we have additional students at the high school, because we've rented out the building to the high school, and then we move those funds through a transfer off of the general fund. I think the question that Kersey is wanting to answer is, what should the balance, the sort of stable balance of those revolving accounts that act as offsets be? Maybe also, what should the sort of stable balance of the other accounts be? Some of what Len is asking is, how tightly should we budget with those offset accounts in mind, or reserve accounts in mind? And then he also wrapped in the town reserve, which we, and I agree with Kersey, have never tapped. So that's a lot of questions all at once that we're not going to solve before there's a vote tomorrow. But that's how I'm understanding the sets of questions. I just wanted to be really clear that the offset, there are only a few of the accounts that dramatically offset, act as an offset, and it's because we add additional services in, collect revenue in for those, and then move the expense off. The others are more sort of wholly separate, and the reserve, I understood us to only have one that we could hit as a school system, and don't disagree that should we have an emergency under our current setup with long range plan, it might be worth a discussion with long range plan about the other reserve, the town reserve account.
So that was my misspeaking. I meant, when I said reserve, I meant the revolving. I was lumping them all together under one heading. And in terms of, I understand what you're saying, that they're being used for now, but that has not always been the practice. And
right.
So it's not, I am speaking to past practice, probably not under you. Anyway, it's so I'm just trying to
balance on revolving accounts that we have spent down, right?
Yes.
That's what you're talking about, the built up balance.
Well, it's that, yeah, we've spent down the balance, but I meant that in the past, when we basically ran out of money back in 20, whatever, 10, 13, I don't remember what year. We basically used all of the balances. I mean, things were applied to what they could pay for, but for
Right.
example, the foreign tuition does not, I mean, I understand what you say it's being used for now, but it's not something that we have to use on specific things. Whereas for example, the bus account, well, okay, that was my understanding, and that was
Well, I
They're
mean,
not
it's
them. All
pretty
of them
much
have.
anything at the high school could fall into that,
Right.
right? It's pretty
okay.
broad.
So
It's broad.
yeah, it ends up being pretty fungible. Anyway, okay, so I'm trying to figure out what path. It feels like the first thing we want to do is think about what we think is what we all would be comfortable with, right? And then we go talking to finance committee and maybe long range plan after that. Is that a plan?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, so I'm going to put this as an agenda item in the future so people can start thinking about what they are comfortable with. Liz, if you get us, or Chris actually, could get us information about where you're feeling the constraints over what, for example, foreign tuition is being used for or coming from, that would be helpful.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So just a sec. Okay, so
So are you asking like what are the
you're saying it's being used for specific things, which are therefore going back to the students who are paying for it.
Mhm. It's not as direct because it's like it's paying for them to have the whole high school experience. So like Len said, it should go towards things that are towards the instructional programming at the high school. But
But
like it is an offset, it is a revenue source for an additional service that offsets the cost of that additional service. That is what the rental account is. That is what the foreign tuition account is.
okay.
That is what the Gibbs Nature's Classroom account is.
Right, that's a different one. Okay, so what we're gonna do is budget, then FinCom, then long range plan. And maybe Liz, you can tell Jim we're starting to discuss this if he wants, if he feels like long range plan should come in earlier.
Yeah, I'll talk.
Okay, so okay. So anything else on this? Oh, Chris, when you're doing the reports, it would be helpful to get the ACE numbers too.
I get those.
Okay. So anything else? No. Okay, so next, planning for FY 27. So now we're talking about the superintendent's proposed budget. So Len, you had brought up some stuff at the workshop.
Yeah, I think most of it's resolved, but I guess it's still not quite. So I guess one initial question for Dr. Holman is to set the stage. If you did have $150,000 more, I saw that you increased the reserve. Would you go for more reserve, or would you consider other reverses of cuts?
So I adjusted I think it was 0.0 in the last one too. Or was it 0.6?
It was down to 0.6 in the last one.
Yeah, and I think I had it at 1.0 in the very first version.
Yeah.
It's gone back and forth. I think what happened there was Dr. Jenger and I sat down and looked at the FTE schedule again, and he identified a place where like he hadn't backfilled something, and so I put that extra 0.4 in. I had an additional 150. Well, so what ended up happening after the workshop is that we, thank you to Mr. Carden, did a comb through of a number of things. And this is where multiple eyes on a spreadsheet is exceptionally helpful, because we found a formula error that was pulling off of a salary table incorrectly. And it was essentially duplicating an extra pay item. And then we found a few duplicated longevities, and then we found some longevities that were attached to retirements. And what that ended up doing is offsetting some of the things that the school committee was interested in adding back, and that I agree were good to add back. ML teachers, full reinstatement of ACE. Planning blocks at the elementary level, there's still a reduction to specialists that I recommend leaving in. We had also identified the elimination of a position in IT, which I have spoken with the town manager about. I have spoken with the CIO about. That 150, Mr. Garden, we could kind of think about as that amount because it's similar. However, I would still recommend reducing that and having the dollars in operations. What I would probably do, frankly, with 130,000 additional is put some of that in some operating things that have come up, or in the long-term subline, because we have a lot of teachers this year who've used our new benefits and have taken some leaves, and we've had some TAs who've taken some leaves for new additions to their families. So I'm a little worried that those are budgeted quite tightly, and that we may, if we were to have some surprise leaves, be paying two salaries for a period of time, given how staffed up we've been. So either, yes, I would add to that reserve FTEs, or I would put that in sublines or additional pay lines at the schools, because we did significantly reduce, for example, the high schools sort of. This is the room where Dr. Janger can decide to do something and add a stipend to it for a teacher because they want to run this extra club that's not a contracted stipend. That amount has been reduced, and so we could also put it there. But I would not put it on additional positions, just given the breakout of salaries to ops right now.
Okay. So that provides some direction. I mean, the changes since the last proposal, were to add back in some of the specialists. That was 110,000. Add back in the MLL teacher, the secondary MLL teacher. That's 80,000. So that's about.
It was 1.5 ML teachers, so it was more than just the one.
It ended up
the last one we looked at on the 6th, which just said one.
Kirsty, you and I are getting mixed up when we were in the workshop between a 1.1 and a 1.5. It was
Yeah.
it was 1 point. It was 1.
Oh, I was right the first time.
Yep, you were.
Okay.
It's 1. It's not even 1.1. It's 1.
Oh,
Wait, one
okay.
total. I just
The issue
I'm
more,
confused about secondary versus elementary.
right. So it's 1.0 add back at secondary. There's no add back at elementary. What I had done, and the reason why I was confused, was because I reallocated 0.5 to Pierce because of the caseloads.
Okay.
And so I had tacked that 0.5 on, but that 0.5 actually is already staffed, already exists. The 1.6 reduction is positions that are all currently vacant.
Okay.
So we are currently serving the students we have with the teachers we have at the elementary level, and that 1.6 is through attrition.
Okay.
And I would recommend it stay that way.
Okay. So, but just to clarify, just for messaging, no changes in elementary, in like actual elementary staffing at ML with a yes override between FY26 and FY27.
Correct, with a yes or no.
With yes or no. Okay.
The no, on the no budget, there is still that 1.0 reduction as secondary. At elementary, there is no difference between yes and no.
Okay. We interrupted Lynn. Sorry.
No, so I mean, again, you still have time to make changes for tomorrow night. I mean, it is showing as a reduction, that elementary MLL. So at least show that they're vacant, right? Because it's a reduction from the FY26 budget. So at least show that they're vacant and it's not a real reduction.
We can put that in there. I think that's true of a number of these, so I just gotta go make sure I know which ones are not
Great.
currently filled.
Okay, so back to my main point. So we're adding back, we're basically, since the last proposal, we're adding back 190,000 between the elementary specialists and the MLL secondary teacher, right? So that's sort of the money that I thought I had found. But then we also have the IT director, deputy director at 140 coming out. So that's why I was asking you about the 150, because we do show it coming out. That money went somewhere else. I'm not quite sure where it went. Must have been lots of other minor adjustments or some other corrections. But if you had said that you were willing to put back some of these other positions, and if my fellow committee members have other positions that they think are really critical, then I was going to push some more about whether we can afford those or not. But if we're just going to put it in reserve, I don't really care. So it sounds like we would just put it in reserve. So unless Laura and Kiersey, you feel that there's other things that we really need to reverse in this cut list, then that's then I'm fine with it as is.
I was okay with the reversals that have happened. I do have a bigger picture question, which is a lot of this is being, or retirements are helping fund a lot of this. And what will happen when we go from 27 to 28 in a yes scenario? Will we be able to maintain staffing?
This is why I would put it in reserve, because if
That's where I was going. That's where I was going for it. That
I want to know we're sustainable.
Yeah.
And I haven't run a projection for FY28 or FY29 yet. And I think all of these reductions are reasonable or achieved through attrition or needed restructuring based on enrollment or, if really pressed, I might put a library paraprofessional back in to share across fewer schools, one person. I might consider some of the building sub at the secondary level reinstatement, but I would rather be able to make that call later once we've done some assessment on salaries.
I agree. I think one thing based on conversations I have had around town that sort of I want, should the override pass, I want to be able to say, like, not only to the town and FinCom that we're being careful, but I want to be able to say that to the staff that we have, because I want, given the sort of continued like tightening that we know is likely to happen, I want the people who are here to not like start worrying more than they need to. And so that is part of why, despite the fact that there are painful reductions that in an ideal world I would put back, I think this is the better decision for the health of the district.
Well said.
So I did have one question. When I'm looking at the kindergarten TAs, there's some places where there's not as many kindergarten TA bracket. We've got 3 kindergarten teachers, but we're dropping. Oh, that's the no.
It's the no. That sounds like the no override.
No,
based on
I thought I saw yes somewhere. I must have gotten confused. Okay, never mind.
There are 2 KTAs in the no, and that is quite. And so another place where I didn't make a reduction because of buffer zone strategy in the yes budget, but where we may realize some savings is in K sections. Like we may not need, or in grade 1 sections. I'm keeping an eye on Hardy as well. There are a
Mhm.
couple places where I'm keeping a very close eye on sections. If we were to not pass the override, I'd probably make some different decisions like right away to help inform buffer zone assignments.
Mhm.
That would still keep us around 25 at K12, but that if I don't have to squeeze immediately in those lower grades, it doesn't sound like it was the wish of the committee for us to do that. So that's like, so those K sections, there are two, I think, that are reductions in the no override that includes those two KTAs. And that still keeps us under 25 with a slightly adjusted buffer strategy moving forward, but without going to the 27, but it's tighter. And that keeps us from needing to reduce more at 3 to 5.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Can you remind me how many teachers we had near retirement? Not the ones that you've had turn in, but the whole pool that
Hold on.
be in the next few years.
Yes, but I need to find that spreadsheet, so give me a sec.
I just mean it. I just can't remember the order of magnitude.
We had, when we did this in December, 7 known FY26 like retirements this year, and 69 could retire in the upcoming years
Okay.
during the override period.
Okay.
But we have a lot more than 7 now. I'd say that number probably doubled. So that has reduced that possibility number a
Right.
bit.
Right. Okay. But I remember that the pool was pretty big. I just didn't know. So that could help things too, depending. Okay. So
I have another question, a different question when I have a chance.
yeah, go ahead. Just a sec. I have to grab another piece of paper.
Okay. So looking at the specialist reductions, I imagine you sort of put them in by school sort of as placeholders, right? Okay. So, and then maybe when you think about how you want to just propose this tomorrow night, I mean, I think that, at some of the schools, clearly the reduction on paper, at least for now, is only in physical education. And that would leave the full-time art teacher and music teacher at those schools, Hardy, Thompson, Stratton, and pretty much Dallin. And I think that would probably work everywhere except for Pierce, if that was what the principal at that school determined was their priority, right?
In the current schedule, hold on a second. There's full-time art at Dallin, Hardy, Stratton, Thompson. There's full-time music at Hardy, Stratton, Thompson, and PE is like 1 point something everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that, the ACE sections are somewhat fungible, right?
Yeah,
You're for whatever reason you prioritize the librarian being full time at each school, but if there's a librarian at Pierce that wants to go part time, and the music teacher could take those ACE slots, the schedule works out, maybe that would be an option. I guess I would want to present this as, we're reducing specialists. Uh, you're not implementing a plan for sure yet that Pierce will not have a largely full-time music teacher, right? I mean,
yes, this is not the exact FTE in each of those 3 disciplinary areas is
Yeah.
not locked in until we've built a schedule
Right.
and could move around. I do want to clarify though, we have full-time librarians because librarians do more than teach a special. So do our other specialists, and it's been a long-standing priority and what I've heard from the committee for a while that a full-time librarian at the school provides access to all of those books and to a librarian and additional literacy support for all students, and that the priority for the district has been full-time librarians at every school and an open library for every student all day. If I'm not going to let a school reduce their librarian to bump up a different specialty because that's not the model we've articulated. It is the case that in the absence of full-time librarians, other specialists have done things that in a school district where we have full-time librarians, I've seen a librarian do, like organize all school assemblies, for example. Those cultural hub sorts of things are things that I would expect in a model like this for the librarian to be taking over for folks who maybe can't or don't have the capacity to do that now. But this is a shift that has been kind of long in the making, it part of a lot of discussion. And so if there's a desire for the district not to maintain full-time librarians, we would have to have that discussion. That was not my understanding.
So I think, I mean, if we've heard a lot from the community in the last 2 weeks, and I think if you're asking if anybody put on the table, you have to choose between a full-time librarian and a full-time art teacher, I think you'd get a wide variety of responses, and probably a majority would say the art teacher. And so I think we've never really had that discussion. The full-time librarian was in isolation of the possible removal of a full-time art teacher. So I think that to assume that that's where the preferences lie, both within your staff and within the community, I would press on that a little bit. But I think all those details can be, left for later. We're not changing the schedule. We have some teachers that don't have full-time schedules, and as a result, we'll need to trim. But again, I wouldn't put the librarians completely out of that, but that's, I think, a decision for later.
So I just want to pop in on this. So we haven't reduced the librarians in this, but we have reduced the paras that support the libraries and the digital learning specialist. So the librarian's going to have to at least pick up the para stuff. So whatever they were doing, they now have that additional work to do. And I don't know if they'll pick up any of the digital learning or not, but so basically trading an art teacher for a librarian you're not just trading one-to-one teachers, you're trading more service on one side than the other is providing. So I would be reluctant. I mean, if I did that, then I would want to add back the paraprofessionals or something so that we can make sure that the library stays open all the time.
Yeah. I've been very careful about suggesting too, so I'm just saying this to clarify kind of how I have presented things that for me, we don't swap this for that. This is not a trade situation. It's holistic picture. And I would not couch any of this as we traded our art specialist for our librarian for exactly the reason Kirsty just said, because we have lost resources in the department that houses the librarians also in these proposals. So there is a staffing model conversation to be had here for sure. But we didn't decide to reduce some specialists so that we could keep others. That's not how this worked.
Okay. Laura, did you have anything you want to chime in with?
No, I agree with what sort of where Len started with this in being really clear with the community. I think there's a lot of I don't even just different interpretations of what these reductions mean. And I, for one, have appreciated the superintendent's responses to the community members who've reached out to her. And I have not responded myself because it feels like because it is like the messaging is challenging in the context of the kinds of feedback that we are getting. So anything we can do tomorrow night to like be really clear, I think is helpful.
What clarity from any, like, this would be helpful for me to know.
I think what's hard here, and I think like I think you have been really clear in your responses that to the people who have been emailing. I think it's a really, I think the way that the emails to us have been framed as about individual people has made things really hard. And it's why I have had a hard time responding myself. And so, and we've been talking about this for weeks, right? Like people versus FT, like this is a really difficult conversation for all of us. But I think, I guess I don't really know, Liz. Like I feel like we've gotten this influx of communication in the last several days that we haven't really had the opportunity to address. And tomorrow night is when I think the most people will be paying attention.
Yeah. I think what's difficult is that when we budget, the first, especially in a reduction scenario, and I can think about how to sort of frame this better than it's maybe been or clearer or whatever tomorrow, is that we budget positions. That's what we're budgeting. We're not budgeting for specific people, because if you do that, you enter the need to, you essentially, you're making decisions about individuals. That's a lot harder. It's also not great organizational practice if to do that and not to budget on a staffing model. This budget establishes a staffing model we feel is sustainable for right now. And we've budgeted the positions separate from the considerations that need to happen after the override vote about who goes into those positions and how and what their individual schedules look like. And we do, and sometimes when I say we budget positions, not people, what people hear is we're not thinking about people.
I think, yes, exactly.
And what actually it is it's helping us support the people. When we get to that part, we're better able to look at the full range of resources, to think about qualifications, to look at licensure, and to focus on the people we have and getting them into a spot that works for what they need. If we do both at the same time, it's very muddled. It's very easy for us to accidentally create an equity issue, for us to accidentally reinforce a system that doesn't work, for us to do things organizationally that actually aren't with the kids at the front. When you budget positions, you're budgeting based on enrollment, you're budgeting based on curricular model, on strategy, on initiatives you put forward. And then you help support all the people once you have a plan locked in that is about the positions. This is very hard for people to do because it's people. These are people you see every day.
Exactly.
Your colleagues, yeah. But that's the approach. That's why we talk about it that way. And I need to make clearer that we do that so that we can effectively support all of our staff with the model that we've established, even if it's not the model they would have hoped for, have had in the past, liked working under, because it's built around what the needs of the kids are.
Okay.
Right. If I could suggest an approach here. So, 5 years ago, we changed the model. We inserted ACE and we put full-time specialists at each school. including more than one,
Right.
PE teacher. So we're, as a result of new realities, as a result of the shiftment of enrollment from elementary to secondary, we can't sustain that model. So that's the message. We're keeping ACE, but we can't sustain all of that model. And what we're doing is we're trimming some of the specialists. The details are still to be worked out. There will be a primary art teacher and music teacher assigned to each school under this model, right? You still have 7 bodies of each of those positions, not all full-time, but
Right.
those details can be worked out. But we can no longer afford the old model. But again, the reassurance that each school will have a primary person, I think would be important if
Yeah.
you're willing to say that.
I
Okay.
think sort of in the context of that, the other thing that I would add is that, and this is just like reality, everybody on all different sides of this discussion have equity concerns. And I think the reality is that we can't in the financial situation we're in the school model of variety of school sizes the way we have right now. There will be inequities. There will be we're making decisions based on the best like advice we are getting from you and your principals about which inequities we're going to deal with. But and I say that and I will say this tomorrow, as the parent of children who are benefiting from the current inequities and
Right.
will not benefit with this change. But that's just like, that's just where we are.
This is helpful for helping me sort of think through how to frame this tomorrow. So, would it be helpful to show some of the section move from like 2019? How many sections we had at elementary at that time? How many sections we have now? Because the number of specials we needed when you all made that adjustment filled those like it filled the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I never filled it at Pierce, but
Not
overall that would help. Yes, I
yeah.
think.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm noting it's 1:30 and I didn't know if anyone has a drop dead have to leave time or we can continue talking. Okay, so we can continue a little bit longer.
I just want to say one more thing. I was realizing when we started this conversation and that I did not know this was only a 5-year-old model. That 5 years encompasses almost my entire time as an APS parent. And one thing that I have noticed in the communication I've received is you sort of have 2 categories of people who are upset about this change. You have people who've had the experience that I have of seeing it as just, a loss, right? And then you have people who've been around a lot longer and have impressions of how we used to work before the change was made 5 years ago. And maybe this is what Len is talking about. Like, so the assurances that we can give that this is not a return completely to how things used to be, and that we are being thoughtful about how the staffing model works with the financial realities, I think helps both of those audiences.
Thank you.
It would also help to emphasize that when we're looking at librarians, really what we're looking at is the library. I mean, that we're doing what we can to maintain a professionally staffed library that is open 100% of the time that the kids are in school, and that we have done things that are going to affect that ability. I mean, that there are cuts coming to that department that will affect its ability to maintain that service. So, because I don't think people are picking up on that.
Yeah.
Um, Okay. Anything else on the budget? So Len, you had some questions about numbers that you were having emails offline. Did you get your questions resolved to your satisfaction? I didn't see them, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, so we're all on the same page as far as the staff rollover. Um, uh, it's about roughly 4.7% if we didn't make any changes and nobody left. With the retirements, it gets down to almost 4.1%. Because we're so far we have 15 people who are departing. So that's a lot of savings. Um, so that's good that we're all, and agreed with that. Um, uh, I still, it will be helpful if the currently vacant positions that are on the cut list are identified, because that's sort of where some of my confusion is coming from. Because again, we've got the transportation over under budget, over cost, both combination of both going on this year, but we're covering it through our vacancies that we didn't fill largely. So
I'll add that.
the fact that we're carrying those vacancies forwards is just more of the same, and again, less of a change than I think is currently being shown in the document. So thanks.
I think it's also helpful if when you're doing, I'm thinking about the year when we had positions that were not filled being cut, even though we didn't intend for them to be cut the year after, just to make sure we're not doing that again, because that wasn't a happy thing.
We've cross-checked that. So
Okay.
that's again.
Good. Oh shoot, I thought of something. Okay, so one other question that I had that I discussed with the superintendent, I was worried about how accurate the decreases in the energy costs are, the projection for next year, and what she explained was that part of the excess or the significant bump in costs this year I'm getting confused which year was the zeroing out of some accounts which were due from
It was 20. Priz, could you explain the Eversource high school shift energy issue that happened that resulted in a hit to rentals and the reason for some of the dramatically shifting energy projection?
Yep. So let me see here. Trying to pull up some. So I know, just real quick, because then I'm going to get into some backup stuff. So one thing that did change from last week or 2 weeks ago, and I believe this is actually one of FinCom's questions, was that between the two scenarios, the yes and the no override scenario, was that the difference of the actually net savings for utilities for both gas and electric was different. The reason why is because one, I'll get to more detail next, but that's on operational change. But two was in the yes, we were a little bit more aggressive in the rentals of assuming some offset for electrical costs, about 250 extra. So that's why on the yes, we were showing revenue and direct offsets at 750, but in the no override scenario, this kind of gets to our question of what balance we need. It was only at 500. So it was a little bit more conservative in that end to kind of build up a balance. Part of the reason why I wanted to build up a balance, because in the yes, on a lot of things is there's no buffer whatsoever, is exactly what the superintendent said. So there was a little bit of a gap between last year and closing out and coming into this year, where some of the trivial bills that were still remaining from the old high school building, those accounts got locked out on our end, but we still had a pending balance, and those had to get paid on the building rentals account. I can try and track down the number that actually had to get charged there. So part of why over the last couple of years, our actual budget and actual amount that we spent on utilities, specifically electrical, has gone down, is one, we now no longer have the high school being built while there's still an old high school part of that building or accounts open. So now we're very clean in this current year. Now that got cleaned up, we're very clear going forward. We just have the high school that we're in right now. The other aspect of it is that all of our solar panels, at least in the budget for FY27, are anticipated to be online. So everything here at the high school, I've seen the images, it's like 70% solar panels upstairs. All those are online. The one over the parking lot is all online. And I'm trying to find my notes here. I believe it's Pierce and Brackett, I believe, have 2 solar arrays either online now or going online this spring. And we own those 100%. So there's no like third-party net credit. It's all in-house. So that is contributing to the decrease in direct utility costs. There's a little bit of an offset of our electrical contract costs go up just to manage those sites and manage that utility, but the actual utility cost is going down. The number that we are budgeting, as we have in the last couple of years, is directly from analysis of Talia Fox, our sustainability manager or sustainability coordinator for the town. So she works directly with facilities, with Jay McNeil, and with my office on kind of year-to-date numbers, our projections, and then she also works with us on our projections going forward. So the number that's built into next year is that baseline based on her projections. But again, it's taken into account all these new solar arrays, more efficient investments that the town has made actually coming to fruition. So we hope to see those continue going forward. So I think to the particular question about the offset number that's shown is actually a savings on an operational ad is, again, because one is those green investments are reducing our actual utility costs now that everything's online. And again, we're just one high school. But then two is there is a budgeted $188,000, I believe, is offset into the revolving account as well. So that is contributing to that $424,000 number that's showing as a decrease on the operating budget compared to last year.
Yeah, I guess this gets back to what Glenn was saying, where it's helpful having all in because it's just hard to figure out what. I mean, I appreciate what you said, and that's useful, and I'm glad that it looks like everything matches up. But so when you say that Tully, I had predicted almost half, I forget if it was $400,000 or $500,000 decrease in utilities.
Yeah.
Did that include the additional money coming from rentals, or is that?
Yeah, sorry. So I know this is on the budget book, like in the fund chart, but I'll just try and speak to it here. So for example, the current year, again, because that number is shown against this year's budget that was approved last year. For electrical, it was budgeted at 1.95 million. And next year, Talia is projected 1.8. So that's about $156,000. And then for gas was 598,000, and next year she's budgeting 500K. So that just between those two is a little over $250,000 of savings. I then have an additional $188,000 offset from the building rentals.
Okay, so it's
and that's how
really
you back into the 424.
Really, to me, I like to separate the estimates versus the funding source, right? So you're saying the estimates are really only about 10% of, I mean, there's been a 10%-ish reduction in costs, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then where we're paying from it has changed somewhat. So it's not really a $500,000 decrease. It's okay. So that's helpful.
Yeah. And
it's the same thing. I'm just trying to make that when I see something like when we were hit with unexpected energy costs that I hadn't totally understood, and then I'm seeing that, and I knew there were hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then I'm seeing that we're being projected to have, $400,000 or $500,000 decrease in energy. It makes me wonder about the projection.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know what to fix in today, but I think that goes to just reporting changes going forward. That funding summary chart or the change summary chart is the operating impact. But to your point, there's more nuance to it, especially on the ops stuff that I'm speaking to.
Basically, we're just
I hear you.
we have no safety problems heading into the coming year. So, okay, anything else
Sure.
on this? Seeing none. Okay, so I have long range plan. It sounds like we're going to want to discuss. We'll work on what we think the fund balance is stuff, and then work towards whether that when we go see long range plan for that. But it's way after uh, doing the budget, and maybe even after town meeting. I'm not sure. So, and I don't have anything else for you. Do we have any old or new business or future agenda items? Okay. Yes.
We have finance committee soon.
Yes.
So sorry, I'm back to the FY27 agenda item here. Forgot about this. Shall I draft and send draft to you all?
Yes, please.
Okay. Josh and Peggy, it will be tight on timing because they have to say yes tomorrow, and then I've got to turn some slides around. So if there are any requests, additional resources, we do have the questions. If there are any more questions that we should try to build into the presentation, I will be working on this over the next 3 days or so. So send along if you have ideas or thoughts for us to incorporate or be ready to speak to. And I'll send Len, Chrissy, Laura a draft once I've had a chance to get started on it with Chris. We're focused on tomorrow night's slides first. So
Josh, are you talking? Because I can't hear you.
How about now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The old headphone trick. Yeah, two things. I guess, the sooner that people can get it, since it is such a, a lengthy document, the better. I don't know if it makes sense to send a draft or if you're expecting a lot of changes, but, and then just one question from Chris, we were saying about the utility costs, even with the move to electrification, and I assume some reduction in fossil fuel costs, perhaps your electric costs are also projected to go down. That's what you're saying, I think, right?
Yeah, and I apologize. I might not have the nuance to that, but yep, when I met with Talia Fox, we met a couple times this fall, kind of right when I got in here, and then again in January, discussed with our facilities director as well. She has all the backup for those. A lot of it is embedded within those credits coming in. I can't speak to the gas. I can try and dig into that before we meet on Monday. But I know specifically on the electrical side, it's one with the old high school completely falling off. And then two, it's this full building, parking lot, and then those two additional arrays are significantly improving the reduction in our electrical costs as well. I can try and dig a little bit more into the gas
Okay.
and get more info on that before Monday.
And why would you change the thought about the rentals for yes or no? When you
Yep. It might be a larger conversation, and we kind of spoke to it a little bit more when it came to different areas of the budget, but specifically in the no. Again, I think it goes back to what at the beginning of our conversation was, is what should a healthy balance or whatever it is within each of the funds be? And me coming into the district, knowing we had to pay prior bills into this account, there's really no sensitivity. And then you look at the winter we just had right now, that could significantly impact our, a swing in our electrical and our heating bills as well. The no is just a little bit more conservative in that nature, but I think it's a larger, it's not that specific thing. I think there was SPED, there was other positions. It's a no on this override. I know we're looking at deeper cuts into 28. It's a little bit more of a nuanced answer there.
Okay, so
but
not so much
essentially the no override presented just the reduction in anticipated outward costs from Talia without an additional, offset from revolving. So there was still a reduction in electrical and heating costs, but it just didn't take that additional 188 from an anticipation in the revolving account to help build up that balance.
Okay.
But that's since been changed. Yep.
Thank you. Even if you don't want to send the draft to the whole finance committee, if you could possibly send it to me, Peggy, and Dean, that would be helpful.
It is
Yeah.
everything's posted right now for this meeting and for tomorrow night's meeting. The book's there, everything, and I could email it to you guys.
Mhm.
So I'll try to do that right after we get off.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Second,
And everyone vote, Laura?
Yes.
One.
yes.
I also vote yes. So we are all set. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Talk
Thanks.
to you later.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Good luck tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Thanks.